It started with a friend request. Mark hadn't heard the name in over a decade. Julia Saunders. He almost laughed when he saw it. A friend request from a dead girl? Come on. He muttered to himself, very funny, and rolled his eyes. Probably someone screwing around, he thought. Maybe one of those old classmates bored enough to dig up ghosts. Or some scam bot that scraped high school records. Still, his thumb hovered. He hadn't thought about Julia in a long time. Not really. But seeing her name pulled something up. Something warm. And a little sad. In high school, Mark had a quiet crush on her. The kind that lasted for years without ever becoming a thing. They talked during lunch, trade playlists, joke about teachers behind their backs. She was the first person he ever told about his anxiety. She called it his superpower. Said people who felt deeply often saw the world more clearly. One night, just before senior year ended, Mark had asked her out. Not in a grand, romantic way. Just a casual, hey, maybe we could try this for real? She'd said yes. She'd actually said yes. They were supposed to give it a few weeks, see how it felt. But for the life of him, Mark couldn't remember what came after that. No first date. No kiss. No fights. No memories at all. Just nothing. And then, not long after graduation, came the news. She'd died in a car crash. Rain-slick road. One car accident. Everyone said she lost control. Late at night, too tired, too distracted. End of story. So when her name popped up on his phone asking to connect, he stared at it for a long time. Maybe someone was using her name. Maybe some old classmate, pulling a cruel prank. But the profile photo stopped him. It was Julia, not as she looked in her yearbook, but exactly how she looked in the last photo she ever sent him. Same angle, same faint blur. The one she took by the water, sunlight in her hair. He thought it had been deleted. Curiosity, or maybe guilt, took over. He accepted. A message arrived almost instantly. Hey, do you remember what you told me at the lake? He locked his phone and tossed it aside. It was probably someone playing games. Or worse, some weird phishing scam, pretending to be a ghost from high school. He didn't even tell anyone about it. Just shook his head, muttered, real classy, and went to bed. The next night, another message. Do you still have the necklace I gave you? Mark scoffed. Julia never gave him jewelry. That had to be a shot in the dark. He ignored it. A few days passed. Then another message. I remember the night you stopped answering. Still, he didn't bite. It was starting to annoy him more than scare him. He figured whoever was behind the account must be trolling him with half-truths or guessed memories. Then came the third message. You promised you'd call back. He blinked. That one stung a little. Maybe because it sounded like something he would have done, promised and forgotten, or promised and gotten scared. But it wasn't until the fourth message that something broke loose. Do you remember what you whispered in art class when we were sketching the model? He froze. Because suddenly, he did. It hadn't been the lake. That talk came later. The first time he told Julia something real, something that lived under his skin, was during art class. They were sitting side by side, sketching a figure model brought in from the local art exhibition. It was quiet, soft graphite scratching paper, the hum of the lights above. And Mark, not looking at her, had whispered, Sometimes I feel like I'm not really here, like I'm borrowing someone else's life. She hadn't laughed. She hadn't even looked at him. She just said, Yeah, I feel that too. He had forgotten that moment for years. It hadn't even been the kind of memory that stuck out, not dramatic, not romantic, just real. And now here it was, typed out, quoted exactly. Mark felt his mouth go dry. Whoever was messaging him knew things no one else could have known. Things he himself hadn't remembered until they were said back to him. He waited. More messages came, slowly, over the course of several nights, each one sharper than the last. Do you still have the necklace I gave you? I remember the night you stopped answering. You promised you'd call back. He kept deleting them, blocking, unblocking, reporting the profile. But the messages kept coming, sometimes from different names, but always with her voice. Her words. He stopped sleeping well. The messages started to bleed into his dreams, flashes of conversations, memories he didn't remember making. Julia at the lockers. Julia laughing in the rain. Julia in the passenger seat of his old Honda, even though he couldn't recall ever driving her anywhere. He began to question his own memory. Had they actually dated? Had he forgotten something traumatic? Or had grief twisted his recollection beyond recognition? He pulled out old yearbooks, class photos. Her name was there, but barely. No senior quote, no prom photo. Like she had started to fade even before the accident. The paranoia got worse. He covered the webcam on his laptop, put tape over the front-facing camera on his phone, started unplugging his router at night, convinced someone or something was watching him. Then came the phone calls. Private number. No sound, just soft breathing. Sometimes static. Sometimes what sounded like whispering, just out of range. He stopped answering altogether, turned off his phone, disconnected the internet. And still, one morning, when he opened his laptop, there it was. A new message. Just a single video file. He opened it. The screen flickered to life. Grainy footage. Low resolution. The camera moved shakily through a room, slow and deliberate, like someone filming a memory they were afraid would vanish. Mark's breath caught in his throat. He knew that room. The soft purple walls. The bookshelf covered in Polaroids. The desk with the chipped corner. Julia's bedroom. Exactly as it had looked when they were 17. Posters still on the walls. The same stuffed bear with the missing ear, perched on her pillow. The window slightly open, letting the curtain shift like something breathing. And then, slowly, the camera turned toward the mirror. In the reflection, someone stood in the doorway. Not the person holding the camera. Someone else. Still. Silent. Watching. Mark slammed the laptop shut. But the image stayed in his mind, burned there, like afterglow. The shape in the reflection was familiar. Not just vaguely. Not just someone he might have known. It was him, standing in Julia's doorway. But older. Him now. He hadn't been there. He couldn't have been there. And yet, somehow he had. Mark couldn't sleep that night. By morning, his hands were still shaking. He opened the laptop again, hard hammering, and played the video a second time. Same footage. Same slow pan through Julia's room. Same glimpse of himself in the mirror. No edits. No tricks. It was real. Whatever real meant anymore. He exported the file, sent it to a few old classmates. People who knew Julia, who might remember her room. He didn't give any context. Just said, "Can you watch this? Tell me what you see." The replies came back confused. "It's just static. Are you sure this isn't corrupted?" "The file's blank. I can't open it. Keeps saying it's unsupported or missing. Weird. It crashes my phone when I try to play it." He tried again. This time, he sent it to Julia's mother. He hadn't spoken to her in over a decade, but she replied surprisingly quickly. "Hi, Mark. I'm not sure why you're sending this, but I can't view it. It won't load." He stared at the screen. Everyone else saw nothing. Only he could see it. Only he could hear her. He rewatched the video a third time, searching for something he missed. A sign, a clue, a message. And then, the typing bubble appeared. Not in his email, not in chat, just a small black box in the bottom corner of his laptop. It blinked once. Then a message appeared. "It's not where she died." He froze. Another line followed. "I can show you where it really happened. Then, but you have to remember first." Then the video on his screen changed. Same file, same title, but this time, the footage continued past the bedroom. The camera moved down a narrow hallway. Wooden floors. Family portraits on the walls. Familiar, but wrong. Then it turned into a kitchen. Old, dimly lit. Curtains drawn. And outside the kitchen window was a road. A long curve through the woods. His breath caught. It wasn't the highway they always said she crashed on. This was somewhere else entirely. And the final frame froze on a flickering road sign. Worn. Faded. But still legible. One word. Marrowbridge. A place he hadn't thought about in years. A place he swore he'd never return to. Then, another message appeared. "You were there that night, weren't you?" Mark didn't sleep. By morning, he was on the road. No calls. No texts. Just a half-packed bag, an old hoodie, and a memory he hadn't meant to carry. Marrowbridge wasn't on any maps anymore. At least, not on the new ones. It had been swallowed by time. A place people used to pass through before highways learned to skip it. But Mark remembered the way. Not because he wanted to, but because part of him never forgot. The trees thickened as he drove. Pines arched over the road like ribs, the sky thinning above him. The signal on his phone dropped to nothing. The closer he got, the heavier it all felt. A mile outside of town, he stopped for gas. The clerk was young, barely glanced up. But when Mark asked, "Is this the road to Marrowbridge?" the kid froze for just a moment, like the name had teeth. Back in the car, the silence grew louder. His headlights flickered for half a second, though it was still daylight. He ignored it. His knuckles tightened on the wheel. He didn't want to remember, but memory had its own schedule. The last time he'd been on this road, he was 18, and Julia had called him. He hadn't answered. He'd seen her name flash on the screen 3 times. He was with friends. He was laughing. He was tired, and by the time he listened to the voicemail, she was already gone. He used to tell himself it wouldn't have made a difference, that he couldn't have done anything, that she probably just wanted to talk. But now he wasn't so sure. The voicemail had been short, crackly, wind in the background. Her voice, shaken. "I think I messed up. I don't want to be alone right now." Then nothing. No crying. No goodbye. Just that. The trees parted. A curve in the road. He slowed, and there, half covered in moss and thyme, was the old guardrail. Bent. Split open. Metal peeled like paper, as if something had clawed its way out, not crashed in. He pulled over, stepped out. The air smelled like pine and rust. He walked to the edge, looked down the slope, and there it was, the skeletal remains of a car. Twisted, faded red, buried halfway in earth and leaves. Julia's car. He didn't remember coming here after the crash, but his body did. His hands shook the same way they did 12 years ago. He knelt beside the guardrail, and on the wood post nearby, barely visible under weather stains, something was carved. "Answer next time." His throat tightened. A buzz. He looked down. No signal. And yet, a message appeared on his lock screen. "You made it." No signal. No number. Just those words, glowing against the cracked screen like an accusation. Mark looked up at the trees. Nothing. No movement. But something felt off, as if the woods were holding their breath. He stepped over the guardrail and began the descent. His shoes slipped against wet moss and loose dirt, but he didn't stop. Something pulled at him, not curiosity anymore, but dread. A slow realization that this wasn't about Julia wanting peace. This was about someone else. The car was still there. Red, rusted, nearly swallowed by leaves and mud. The windshield long gone. The interior caved in. But on the passenger seat, half buried in debris, was a phone. Not Julia's. A newer one. Fully charged. Screen unlocked. A video already queued. He tapped play. The camera pointed at a wall, scratched and dirty, with a piece of paper taped to it. A printed screenshot of him from 2 nights ago, sleeping on his couch. He dropped the phone. It landed face up in the moss, the screen flickering once. No more messages. Just his own photo, taken seconds earlier. From behind. Someone had been close. Watching. Mark spun around. The woods looked the same, but the silence had changed. Tighter, unnatural. Then, ahead on the slope, a figure stepped into view. Not a ghost. Not a shadow. A man. Plain hoodie. Work boots. Gloves. His face was familiar, but not in a way Mark could place. Maybe someone from school, or a sibling of someone he'd forgotten. The man didn't speak. Didn't need to. He just looked at Mark with the quiet of someone who had waited years for this moment. Mark tried to speak, to stall, to ask why, but the man moved fast. A sharp blow knocked him backward. He hit the dirt. Hard. Another blow. Then another. Fast. Quiet. Controlled. It wasn't passion. It wasn't rage. It was purpose. When it was over, the man crouched beside the body, his breath steady. No shaking hands. No hesitation. He reached into Mark's pocket, took the phone, and left. By morning, Mark's car was found just off the roadside. Driver's door ajar. Phone missing. No wallet. Keys still in the ignition. His sister filed the missing person report that afternoon. Said it wasn't like him to leave without saying anything. Police searched nearby trails. They found nothing. No body. No signs of foul play. Just tire tracks and a cigarette, but near the slope. Weeks passed. Then, quietly, someone posted on Julia Saunders' old memorial page a single photo of the crash site, fog curling through the trees. The caption read, "Some people bury the truth, others dig it up,